right. So here we go, everybody. My name is Gary Prater, Director of Business Development with Ingage Partners, and want to wish everybody out there a happy belated Father's Day. Hope everybody had a great weekend with their family and friends, and excited to announce that we're talking to Mr. Robert Bell, who is the Director of Economic Inclusion and Equity for Hamilton County. And we are going to talk today about his inclusion and equity work. So do us a big favor. If you have questions, please add them in the chat and we will work them in towards the end of the show. But let's go ahead and get this party started. Robert, do us a big favor. Please tell us a little bit more about who you are and how you are actually leveling the playing field for all of the different vendors here in Hamilton County.
Well, my background is economic inclusion. I've been doing diversity and economic inclusion for 30 years probably. And I started my career, most of my career at United Way of Greater Cincinnati, and working in all different parts of United Way, allocations, planning and strategic planning and volunteerism, all of it. But I also was dealing with diversity a lot. I was doing consulting a little bit on, for United Way with nonprofit agencies on how to function more like a business. And one of the things was I was having them do evaluations on their agencies and service effectiveness, but we also looked at their boards. And when we looked at their boards, leadership boards, they needed more diversity on them. And they even said that, and how could they do it? So I went up to United Way of America and got trained in a program called Project Blueprint years ago. And that was a board training program specifically for minority groups. And it was called Project Blueprint. And I came back and we started that program. And it was a 6-month program, once a month. It wasn't small. It was 6 months. And I did that program for 11 years.
Fantastic.
Graduated over 350 people, and I still run into people today and say, Robert, you got me started in this stuff. I had not been able to stop. But it was an amazing program, anywhere from financial management, strategic planning, fiduciary responsibility. And it wasn't just to be on boards, it was really how to be a leader on nonprofit boards. And I used the stuff I learned in my training to be on boards and committees for 20 years myself. You know what I mean? So I've always kind of done this work. I also dealt with diversity a lot when I was with Children's Hospital. I was with the Sickle Cell Awareness Group. I worked for them right out of college and stuff. And that was to do, and that's how I learned community advocacy and that kind of thing. Because, back then, the treatment of sickle cell patients were woefully, just underused, no research was going on and all that kind of stuff. So I spent a lot of time being an advocate for sickle cell patients and their families through Children's Hospital. And that we had a great program, the Sickle Cell Center there for years. So, I mean, I've been in this field a long time. I'm from Cincinnati, born and raised, went through Catholic schools, Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, Catholic college, Catholic graduate school. My mother was very active in the Catholic community in Walnut Hills. So I'm a lifelong Cincinnatian. Lived up in Washington, D.C. in the 80s for a while, but came back to get my master's degree in leadership and business development.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for telling everybody about your background and your history and how you got into this work. And you're doing meaningful work, and you have been all your life. So kudos to you for like you said, community impact and giving back in different areas. You have had incredible impact, and there's a lot of awards and programs that you've worked on and won. So what really actually started to get you more of a deep dive in the economic inclusion type of work that you're doing right now?
Well, let me just start it off by saying, I'm really glad, to have this opportunity to be on your program, Gary, and with the help you guys have given me. But and I enjoy doing this stuff a lot, but I'm also doing it a lot on purpose because we're in turbulent times right now with the huge debate over economic inclusion in anything. And so some of me and my colleagues across the country that I talk to a lot, we changed the way we do our talks now. And one of the things we focus first on is what is the true purpose of economic inclusion? And that is to ensure, it's simply to ensure that everyone has a fair opportunity to compete. And the key verb is to compete. Okay, and that's what we do. And I can tell you about all the programs that we put together over the last 5 to 7 years in order to help them compete. But that's the key. You know what I mean? That the purpose of why we're here. The other thing that was really important for me was one thing that I think I mentioned to you before. Back in 2020, I've been in this, I've been doing diversity training, bias training, all that kind of stuff for years, along with my Project Blueprint training and stuff like that for board leadership. But in 2020, I heard about a group called GARE, G-A-R-E, which stands for Governmental Alliance on Race and Equity. And I hadn't known about it before. And I think it's one of the best kept secrets around. But it's a group of 400 organizations throughout the United States that for governmental workers. I mean, counties, cities, municipalities, all that kind of thing. And they have over, I think, 30,000 members with those 400 companies, 400 organizations throughout the country.
Wow.
The country. And what I did was I had Hamilton County do get a membership. It costs about $2,000 to $3,000 a year. But that gave me access to just tons of research that they've done. And they partner with a group called Race Matters. And I've also become a member of them and know about them. And I went through GARE's equity framework training back in 2020. And that's training that they do with Race Forward and other groups around, around just systemic change. It's called groundwater training, and a lot of people have gone through that I've talked to across the country. But what it does is it let me know that I was doing okay in my past, doing a lot of the training and support stuff around diversity and stuff. But Gareth taught me through this equity framework that you had to spend as much time, if not more, on systemic change,
okay,
and cultural change in an organization, so it is sustainable by itself. And not just you have to be pushing all the time to get people to change their habits and their practices. And after I had taken the equity framework training, we instituted a thing in Hamilton County called PSPE, which stands for Policy, Strategies, and Recommendations. Policy, Strategies, Practices, and Expectations. PSPE. And so since 2021, that's all I've got staff now to do a lot of the other stuff that I have to do as part of the job, but I spend most of my time really making changes in those areas: policy, strategies, practices, and expectations. And in 2021, we did a trend chart of the spending, and we saw a nice increase for small and minority companies. Once the positive increase started when we got we had the expectations changing, and then in the following years we added the policies, practices, and strategies, and that's where we're at now, and that's why we're getting the results we are.
Can you do me a favor and our audience a favor? What were some of the expectations and some of the stuff that you put in place that helped drive success throughout the program?
Well, let me pull up the first slide and the second slide. Let me pull up the slides for me. Okay, and that's just this one. Well, when I got to Hamilton County in 2018, I met with all the directors to let them know what our plans were and what the department was about. And I also met with a lot of the purchasing people, because one of the things that Hamilton County wanted me to do was to help them improve economic inclusion in two major areas. One was purchasing and procurement. The other was human resources. So I spent a lot of my first few years really working close with both of those departments, and did a lot of things with purchase with human resources. I could talk about that later. But when I was talking to the purchasing people, I met with them and I asked them how were you doing with small and minority groups, and they were like, well, we're not sure we know who they are.
Okay.
So I started what's called the Bold Contractor Directory. And now that directory has almost 1,000 businesses on it, and it's anybody that wants to get on it, but it's used extensively. It is now known as the Hamilton County Formal Organizational Vendor List, because in certain instances, people have to go to the Bold list first, okay? And it's being used internally and that kind of thing. And so the first thing I get people to do when I want them to get connected with us is get on our Bold list and get registered on our procurement software, so they can get notices of the opportunities. Because I tell, and I talk to hundreds of businesses a year personally, and my staff does too. And I tell them, the only way you're going to make money from places like us is through responding to quotes, bids, and proposals. So you really have to know how to do that. Okay,
Right.
But this also, because I wanted our purchasing staff to know, and it was the first vendor list that Hamilton County ever had that showed who was small, minority, and women owned. And they're probably less than half of who's on there. Anybody who wants to get on there can get on there. But we have it on our website, and it's being used tremendously by purchasing staff, by contractors that do work for us that are looking for, because we have goals, and who are looking for subcontractors to hit their goals. And even things like human services groups use it. All the chambers in Cincinnati use it.
Okay.
I've got 40 community partners who like the chambers and other places that support and help development with these small and diverse and women businesses. They use it. I heard this year that there's 49 municipalities around Hamilton County that we give federal funds to and grants to help them continue to upkeep their infrastructure, building and maintenance and all that kind of stuff. And they're even being told about the Bold Group. And so I get a lot of calls from vendors now saying, "What the heck y'all doing down there?" I never used to get calls to give a quote and bid, and I'm getting them. I have one guy said, "I've gotten 4 this month." You know what I mean? And so that's the kind of thing that tells me that's really working. But again, it took us for 5 years to get it to this point. With
Okay.
The next thing you're talking about, so that's the first thing I do. The next slide, please. We started doing, how to do business with Hamilton County. Because again, they have to know what we expect. They have to know how we operate. So there's an hour training that I started doing back in 2020 to community groups, to outside groups. We even do it individually if we have to, on teams, to small groups, on how to do business with Hamilton County. And it goes over our purchasing process, the rules and regulations, how to do things like, search for opportunities on our website, going to pre-bid meetings around construction, especially, and pre-proposal meetings. If you're going after something, or you want to be a subcontractor or something, it's very important. And before I got here, a lot of small and diverse companies weren't going to those because they didn't even know about them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I make sure that they go to our website and search for it, because in every solicitation, even for proposals, there have when the pre-bid or pre-proposal meeting is. And so I make them look at that and make sure they get to that, and other things that they need to know just about how Hamilton County operates.
Excellent. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, like you just mentioned something, and I was just trying to keep it light with all of the different changes and stuff that's going on right now. What's coming regarding DEI and economic inclusion, and you mentioned a word earlier, the verb, which is sticking out of my mind is compete, right? But what is your approach and Hamilton County's approach to inclusion and equity? And then where do most people or organizations kind of get it wrong? Because to me, what you're saying is that all it is leveling the playing field and giving small to medium-sized business owners the opportunity to compete. Go ahead and elaborate.
Right. Because and I'm telling you the kind of things we take them through. You know what I mean? The bold list, how to do business with Hamilton County. Because I found out early on, especially after getting connected with Gary, that we need to do more than just set goals. Now, one of the things we had to do early on when I got here, we had to have a disparity study, because the prosecutor's office, who was our legal counsel, told me when I got here, you can't do any preferences for women and minorities. That it goes against the Ohio Revised Code. But there was a law that was interpreted by a regional judge up north that said it did. It wasn't in the code at all, because even the state has set-asides for minority businesses. Okay, so I thought we could do that when I got here because I knew about that, but I was told that legislation only applies to direct governmental departments, not municipalities, government, and other governments. And the legal rulings and precedents were that we could not do it. So we had to do a disparity study because we had to establish a compelling governmental interest, and we had to prove that there was statistically significant disparities for women and minorities in our relevant market area. It's very specific, the type of things we buy and where we spend 95% of our money. And before I got here, Hamilton County didn't know what their spending relevant area was. And we found out it was a 9-county area where we spent 95% of our money, including Hamilton County and surrounding counties. And so the disparity study, if people don't know, all it does, it's a year-long process, and I'll say this real quick. The disparity study is where you hire a company, and there's only about 5 or 6 nationally that really can do it. Has never lost any court suits, that kind of thing. But they study our disparity study came in and reviewed every it's a huge research project. They reviewed every contract over $10,000 that we did over a 5.5-year period. It takes a year to do a disparity study. Wow. And they do the demographics on all that spending. How many, majority companies, how many minorities, what ethnic groups, and even thinking how many women. And they get all that data. And at the same time, after they find out the relevant market area, they do what's called an availability survey, because and that is finding out who's available, how many small minority and women-owned businesses are available in your relevant market area. Well, and some counties and places early on had it wrong because they use census data only, but you can't do that. Availability means available, capable, and willing. And because everybody doesn't want to do business with municipalities and stuff. So that lowers your number, but it gives you a true picture of what's actually possible. And we use those percentages as our goals. I mean, we have so much research. We have a percentage that our goal specific spreadsheet, using all that background data, can tell us, okay, we got a painting job. What's the goal we should have on this painting job? You know what I mean? For minorities and for women and that kind of thing. So it's and I don't set the goals. The department set them using our goal setting, contract specific goal setting sheet, and then I approve it. Okay. That kind of thing. But that's the stuff that we do to ensure that this stuff is happening, because we had to establish, like I said, compelling governmental interest in order to really legally be able to implement those goals. And once we did, we came up with recommendations, and it took us a year to develop the recommendations into action and also to implement them. It took a year and a half. So, I mean, it takes a long time. I had to really learn patience.
It's a virtue.
And I had some commissioners who really wanted stuff to happen right away, and I had to go sit down with them and talk. These are the steps we have to take if we want to do it right, so that it's not challengeable and all that kind of thing, easily challengeable.
Excellent.
So that has helped us tremendously.
Good. And then, right now, kind of tell me about a time when all of the stuff that you've been putting together, your inclusion and equity and educational programs, have actually led to some excellent outcomes for some of the businesses that get involved.
Yeah, let me have the next slide, please. Okay, because one of the things that and me and my colleagues talk about this a lot. So we had, like I said, we had to do more than just set goals. And you have this kind of program, you have to find out a way to support, especially those goals, that those vendors that you're trying to attract and to help them be successful. So when I met with the purchasing people back in 2018, they didn't think they knew many small and women-owned businesses, minority businesses. So I started a Getting to Know You program, where I would arrange a brief meeting, informational only. It couldn't be around any solicitation that we have out there. And it's not mandatory that they do anything with each other. But what I found out was just doing that, and it's like 20 to 30 minutes. We started it during COVID, and it was virtual. We still do it virtual because that seems to be the easiest way to get everybody in together, the purchasing staff and the vendors. And then the vendors can just go through slides and stuff about what they produce, how they do it, what their products are, and that kind of thing. And these are people that we celebrated. I did a presentation to the board in April, early April, and we celebrated some Getting to Know You successes here. And these are people that came to me and said, Robert, we just can't get any work from Hamilton County. I've been trying for years. So I got them to go through Getting to Know You. Well, first they had to register with us. Then, they went through our, how to do business with Hamilton County meetings or training, whichever way. And then I put them in the Getting to Know You program. And what happens is they get a chance to really find out, what department, because I think I match them with a specific department that might be, possibly buy their services. And then they can hear what the department expects from contractors, how they work, how they operate, what they're looking for. And then they get the chance to tell the purchasing people their services, how they think they could benefit Hamilton County and stuff. And one of the things that the people tell me is, Robert, we just never got a chance to talk to purchasing people like this. And the purchasing people say, well, we didn't really know all this was out there. You know what I mean? But because of this program, I think that last year was the first time that a woman-owned business that was not in construction made over $250,000 on a contract.
Fantastic.
First time that I could find in any records. You know what I mean? And it was the first time that we had any A&E firms. The two gentlemen on there are architects and engineering firms that had ever done work with the stadiums.
Wow.
And, they have participated. Since then, they have participated in stadium projects, and one of them is on a 3 to 5 year contract with them. Doing that, and just what they're doing is rotating jobs through him and other contractors that are still part of the 3 to 5 year contracts. A&E group, architecture and engineering group. Mm-hmm. And the other part, Thomas Fernandez, is one of the ones. He's the first minority that's really been part of that 3 to 5 year A&E firm group, which is usually two or three or four contractors that they rotate all the projects through a 3 to 5 year period. And that was a major accomplishment for us in all these work.
Excellent. Well, great job on getting people together, and that knowledge share and community connections and all the stuff that you're doing is obviously working out well. So congratulations on your success, as well as the success of some of these folks that I see here on this screen. I have heard of Elevar Design Group, and obviously Regina Carswell Russo. I used to watch her on TV, but it's excellent at what you're doing right now. What are some practical tips that listeners can take to rethink how they approach, inclusion work, basically?
Well, again, that vendors can take, you said, or people who are. Okay.
And all of our listeners, small businesses that may be out there, folks that may want to get involved and learn how to do business with Hamilton County. So,
well, the first thing you got to do is something similar to our PSPE. You got to change the policies. And two of the policies that it took us, some really, a couple of months to get past. One of the policies is that we have solicitations we have goals, XBE goals, small minority women-owned business goals, and all solicitations. And that's even in construction, professional services, and goods and services. And they never had it in professional services before, before we were able to get that passed. And that made a lot of difference. So, you've got to change the policies and the strategies, the practices and expectations. And you start with the policies. There's also a policy that when a person submits a bid or a proposal, that it comes through my office first. And just to see if they've made any attempt, a good faith effort attempt to achieve the economic inclusion goals. They never had that before either. And when I talked to some people at the Ohio Department of Development and other places, they were saying, Robert, we don't know many inclusion departments that have that power to do that. Because it's harder, because they have to submit their goal compliance plan when they submit their bid or proposal, instead of afterwards, which a lot of people do, is then try to talk them into doing it after they win the contract. And sometimes that's a waste of time.
Okay. So getting out in front of everything. Okay. All right.
It's got to be up front. So doing those things are something that I think that the practitioners in here, again, it helped me to understand that I needed to do more than just set goals. And I'll show you another program with the next slide on what we did. Last year I started the $1 Million Project Initiative because last year I had some open heart surgery, doing great now, but I was out for a couple of months, and when I was out and came back, I had a lot of calls from small and diverse companies. And when I finally got to them, I'm like, well, what can I do to help you? And they said nothing. They said, you've already done it. And I said, what? And they said, We just signed a large subcontract with some of your major projects. And it was not just one. This is a 911 emergency center. And the slide looks a little crazy here, but there's three of them. We've got the new gun range, the safety center out in Colerain Township, and we have Hillcrest Youth Center, which is out in Springfield Township. And the other one's on Colerain Avenue, the regional gun center. That's the one that used to be out in Lincoln Heights that they shut down, and they're building a much larger one. But each of those are part of my $1 million projects initiative, because these are the subcontractors that together in this project shared over $2 million between these three contractors, and all three of them it goes from like 1.2 to $2 million, and that's about two or three or four sometimes of small diverse contractors. And so what I do is make sure that they learn how to approach and look for solicitations that are on our website and that we publicize, to see what the major contracts are, so that they can then approach the primes that are going after it as subcontractors. Because most of my I've got almost 1,000 small and women-owned businesses on my on our vendor list, but not that many of them can go after multi-million-dollar contracts because of surety bonding, the cash flow issues, and the capacity that they have with staff. So, and I learned, my background is federal procurement. I did it with HUD and the Housing Authority for 8 years before I got here. And what I found out that subcontracting was the way for me to help. And they had a program called Section 3 with Housing and Urban Development Program that I ran for Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority. And I learned that the way that they could get more money, and most of their money, is through subcontracts. So I also trained them on how to do business with CMHA and all that kind of stuff. So some of that stuff I just brought here. But again, it's just having them understand what the strategies are that other people are using. But a lot of them don't know about this, And the other thing is to go to pre-bid meetings. That's what I train them in how to do business with Hamilton County. Is to look at the when the solicitation comes out, scroll down and find out when the pre-bid meeting is and where, and come to the pre-bid meeting with business cards and willing to talk to people, because a lot of those people who come to pre-bid meetings are people going after the $8 million or $18 million or $20 million project. And so some of these people did that. And we're able to get connected for them to find out who it is. So stuff like that they have to do. You really have to learn how we operate, really pay attention to the instructions. The other thing is, if you can't make it to the pre-bid meeting, the day after the pre-bid meeting, they put out an addendum to that solicitation listing who signed up for the pre-bid meeting. So I've had some contractors that I told them, look at that list and then go after some of them. And that's what they're doing.
Okay.
And it's paying off.
Fantastic. So basically, you've been educating a lot of organizations on how to do business. You've been getting them visibility. And then one of the most important things, I think, that is a common theme throughout this conversation, Robert, that I think it comes natural for you, is relationship building and building mutually beneficial relationships between some of these prime contractors and some of these subs and the individuals that run these organizations, to help everybody create winning situations. Right. Is that it?
So yeah. And so let me go to the last slide. I think this is the last slide. Last year as well, I started the Mentorship Partnership Initiative because, again, we have to do more than just set goals. And so I needed to make sure, because one of the things was with my experience with HUD and the Housing Authority, I met some wonderful small minority and women-owned businesses in my 8 years there. But when I looked at them and asked them questions, and I found out there was a common theme among the ones that were doing on a good trajectory, that were doing well. And that theme was they had alliances and partnerships. So, when I got here, after I could get everything else in line, the goals and policies and practices and stuff, I started on the support systems that you need to add to these programs. And that was the $1 Million Club, that was the Getting to Know You program, and also the Mentorship Partnership Initiative. And what it is I go to a prime and talk to them, and I say, I tell them about my idea, and that I'd like them to get involved. And everybody doesn't do it, but I found 4 so far. I've done 4 of them already, and I'm planning on doing at least 2 to 3 more this year, where I arrange a meeting. First, I go to the prime contractor and I say, what do you do most of your subcontracting in? What type of subcontractors do you use the most in the work you do? They give me a list, and then I take that list and I go to the bold list and I sort for that. And then I pick 8 to 10 of smaller vendors from that list, and I invite them to a meeting with the prime. Now I tell the prime before the meeting, I said, I need you to be serious about this. And I want you to pick 3 or 4 of those vendors from the 8 to 10 that you're willing to do more work with. And that work could include 1 of 3 things. One is that you're willing to give them guidance, ongoing guidance and direction to help them improve how they're doing their business, or mentorships, or subcontracting.
1 of the 3. All right.
Yeah. Now the subcontracting really comes down the road because they've got to have faith in them and get to know them and stuff. But all the 4 that I've done so far are doing, that first thing. And there's a couple of companies that have gotten subcontracts so far from the early ones that we did last year. But the primes, the vendors tell me, Robert, because I tell them they're not all going to get picked. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I tell them that when I set them up for the meeting. But they say, Robert, that's okay because we never get a chance to talk to these primes. And the primes say, well, we never knew all this was out here. Yes. And then I asked the primes, later after I got them committed and stuff, I said, have you ever done this kind of thing before? And they said, no, not really, but you're the first one that asked us.
If you don't ask, you don't receive, right? Yeah.
So, I'm not shy about asking anybody, even if they look at me half crazy.
Well, you never know until you ask the question. So
you never know. You never know. But I found some good people so far, and I'm still in the opening for some other good people. I even have a company up in Columbus that's interested in it, and I also have an A&E firm that has mentored a small, diverse other A&E firm for years, and that person's getting ready to retire, and they heard about our program. They said, Robert, can we be part of mentorship thing? Because we need to find somebody to replace our guy, our subcontractor that we use on a lot of stuff. So I'm looking at setting something up with an A&E firm because you can do it in anything. It doesn't have to just be construction, because it's really needed in all fields. So that's my strategy. And you know what all that does? Helps them compete. Helps them compete. I can't say it enough. Helps them compete.
Yes, I think that there are a lot of different misconceptions out there on economic inclusion. And I believe that this opportunity for us to talk about it right now and all of the different programs that you put in place and that Hamilton County has to offer for these small to medium-sized businesses is impactful for our community on a whole. And Robert, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. I know that I remember connecting with you when I was working for IST Incorporated, which was a small minority business enterprise, used to be led by Mike Ahmed. And we got involved with Hamilton County and went over to the Small Business Association business and building, met a lot of different folks over there, start building some different relationships with different chambers and all kinds of stuff like that. And it all was because of you and you helping us out and helping us navigate that space back, like you said, right before COVID hit, as a matter of fact.
But Gary, and people have to realize that we help everyone. I mean, anybody who wants to learn more about doing it or wants to be involved in one of our support things that I just told you. I had a majority contractor come to me early this year and say, we just can't get anything from, any contracts in Hamilton County. Can you help us? So I took them through the process. And 3 months later, they want $1 million contract.
There you go.
So it's for everyone. It's for everyone.
Yes.
But I also want to make sure that we're helping those that are most vulnerable, that need it the most as well. But I'll talk to any contractor that calls me and are interested in doing work with Hamilton County, and I'll help them be able to learn how to do it fairly and effectively as much as I can.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Robert, where can people find you and connect with you that want to learn more and want to get involved, sir?
Yeah, I want people to go to our economic inclusion website. You can just Google Hamilton County Economic Inclusion, it'll take you to our website. You can go and look at the bold list from going on there. You can also contact me from there. If you're interested in some of our support programs, you can contact me about that. And my number is 513-948 513 yeah, what is it? I never call my number. 946 4428.
Say that one more time to make sure the people
Yeah,
got
513-946-4428.
Okay, fantastic.
That's my office number. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, if people are interested and want to know more, I'm doing talks in the community. I'm the Minority Business Assistance Center, and we just and African American Chamber, they're doing a contacts to contracts seminar that I'm part of, and I think that's next week. Hold on, let me see. Yeah, that's on the 26th out at Great Oaks from 8 to 3. So if people want to look for some opportunities and learn things about what the Minority Business Assistance Center and the state is doing with the African American Chamber, come to that event on the 26th. I'll be there too. I'm doing a presentation. I will have a booth and that kind of thing. But we just finished our small business day, which was huge. We had over 600 attendees
Wow.
over at Xavier Centos Center, and
Okay.
and it was a great event. We also had a deal making event where we had major contractors have 15-minute sessions with small businesses throughout the day, and everybody loved it. So it went really well, and that's the kind of thing we all have to do more of, because all this stuff, even besides in construction and all the other areas, but it's all about relationships and building trust and support for each other.
Exactly.
That's why I think we're getting the results we are, as much as just having goals on everything.
Good. Well, I again thank you very, very much for your time and for educating myself and the audience out there. And keep doing what you're doing, because you're doing meaningful work and it's very important. And we thank you again for your time. And I'll be in touch soon. We'll continue to talk and get some things done. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, everyone, for being here.
Thank you.